We have Karim López, Brooklyn's very own, to my right. We have Farhad Shariat, Culver City's prodigal son. You know what I'm saying? The Iranian stallion to my left right here. And that's where the song's gonna go, bam, intro. You know what I mean? On far zooming in, being like, please don't call me that in public.
Make no mistake, baby, you fucking with the best of them. My elevator cup will knock the snot about the rest of them. So if you doubt the kid got hard up in his chest pops, you got me fucked up like ex-cops and gem pop.
Don't touch that dial, cause there's nothing else on. You might just as well listen to
the next episode of the Gabo Show.
Welcome to episode 13 of the Chris Gabo Show. 13.
I
don't know if it's unlucky, lucky, or what, you know, what we believe. But like, how long years have you guys been working in this industry? Start with to my left.
Close to 30 years.
God damn. Well, you look great.
29 years. Thank you. No, I was a college student. I was an intern.
Actually, I want to now, because I know a lot of your narrative, I'm going to come back to that because that's an interesting thing for the kids at home listening. Karim, how long have you been working in this industry?
Man, let's see. Probably, I think 2008. You know, I started like teaching myself editing on like Final Cut Pro 3 maybe in like 2002, I think. But 2008, I think I started like working for real. So what's that? Almost 20 years, 17 years or something like that.
Right. Okay, I'm glad. I did some good booking. I did some good producing with the... For the people at home who don't know, give us just a little primer, Far and Karim, of like, you know, what you guys actually do in the industry.
I primarily write and produce for television. I started in the film business, transitioned to TV. My partner and I develop a lot of shows. We have show-run a couple TV shows.
Shout out Ran Ravage, friend of the show.
And that's how you and I met, was when we were based at HBO and we were all developing a pilot together.
That is where an email got sent where they said, thank you so much for your mentorship of Chris. And I was like, you're stuck with me, baby. They said mentor in writing, so you know what I mean? Karim, tell the people what you do.
I'm an editor. You know, I'm an artist. I think of myself as a filmmaker, and I've always I started off shooting and editing my own small things, making my own shorts, but professionally, I've been an editor since, like I said, 2008. I started assistant editing, and that's my bread and butter, and that's what I do in the industry, for gigs.
And we met on one of my, honestly, I had nothing to do with the shit, but the thing that I'm most proud of, which is Jim McKay's El Séptimo Día. Yeah. You edited that, and then we met I guess we met after, in a way, because I wasn't there with the editing, but then, you know, when Jim was like, yo, this is the guy who did the show, I was like, you're in LA, this is fucking cool as shit. And honestly, that, working on Jim's movie, I was an associate producer on that, and also I was in it. But for the kids at home who wonder what associate producer means, all I did was, because the whole thing was in Spanish, and he was all casting Spanish and mixed tech, and he was casting Mexican non-actors, right? And he didn't speak Spanish, but he had the script translated into Spanish and mixed tech. My goal, well, first, do you know Brian Goldboff? Do you? Brian Goldboff? He's a really dope writer and a friend and a teacher of mine at NYU. He had hooked me up with Jim to be like, yo, Jim's looking for an assistant. And so we had our first meeting. 15 minutes in the meeting, Jim was like, it's not going to work with the assistant thing, but we can find something else. He was like, we can find something else. And I was like, what do you mean? He was just like, yeah, you're a free spirit, kid. We're going to find something else for you to do. So the job he gave
Good
me.
judge of character.
I don't know this. Maybe I didn't know
the story.
I might have known it and forgot it, but now you remind me oh yeah, I thought you just were, because you acted in it.
Okay, wait, let me tell this story real quick, and then because I think it's gonna, I'm curious. Obviously, I really want to talk about this kind of state of the industry and where we are in the first month and a half of 2025 or whatever. But, as you, Far, had mentioned, how you got into this industry, and you guys both kind of alluded to that. I was like, oh, okay. I think that, let me just tell this story real quick, because I do think that people right now are wondering, how do you get in? And I don't know what to tell people. So I'm going to make y'all answer that question at the very end. But, to the Jim story was basically, we'd had that meeting, and he was like, it's not going to work with the assistant thing. And he had to the task was to convince people on the street, dudes who were, usually undocumented, and, didn't speak English as a first language, that he was not going to try to kidnap them. He was like, I want you to be in a movie, right? So I was that guy. I was out in Sunset Park being like, oye, amigo, una preguntita, you want to be in a movie? And the girlfriends would always be like, he's too ugly to be in a movie, and then blah, blah, blah. And the Jim would be like, what did they say? And I'm like, maybe he'll read for it if we like convince him that we're not taking him to, because it's kind of a, you know, when someone stops you on the street and is like, hey, you want to be in a movie? It's like, unless it's San Fernando Valley, it's a different kind of movie. You know what I mean? Like, even then, you know, it's just like, is something bad going to happen to me? So that was my part one, was just that. And I got an associate producer credit for that. And we did it for a long time, and it was a lot of fun. And then I was reading with them, right? And there was the part, basically the movie was about, it's such a beautiful, Far, you would love this movie. We should actually watch this movie together, because it's like, it's kind of, it's the antithesis of the shit that's going on in Hollywood today. It's like the drama is small and it makes the character stuff so beautiful. And it was just like, yo, there's some guys who play soccer every Sunday, and, you know, they have a game. And it's not, again, but it's like pickup basketball. I mean, it's like no stakes, right? But their best player, you know, has to work that Sunday. And so that's a little bit of an issue. And so they start like ordering food so that he can deliver it and then go play a little bit back and forth, right? And the guy who's his boss, is a dick, was supposed to be like 40 years old. But I kept reading that scene because it was the pivotal scene. And so one day I was like, Jim, come on. And he was like, bro, you're not old enough. And I was like, if I was rich, okay, my dad could have been like, hey, here's $1 million. You can be the owner of a restaurant. He was like, oh my God, just go get an expensive haircut. And then he gave me that part. And so that was that, you know what I mean? And that's how we met.
I'm sorry, but you can cut out where I spoiled the story. And
no,
blew the fact that you were in it as an actor.
No, there's no. First of all, no, it's no. You know, people are the way that people second screen TV. They're definitely second, third, and fourth screening this podcast. So it's important to repeat information. You know, right. It's important to repeat information. But yeah, I mean, so far, Karim, what the fuck is going on? This is like, I mean, we went from COVID. I mean, I entered the industry in COVID, right? Yeah. COVID, strike, genocide. There's a lot going, and then now Trump. I mean, like, what are we all doing here? And no one's working. And well, I mean, hey, some people are working, you know, but there are a lot of people.
Fire. You didn't even mention the fires.
I didn't even mention the fire, which is fucked up. And it's crazy because I don't know what to tell people. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, and the fires happened right when everyone was like, hey, don't worry, stay alive 25. Yeah. It's all going to be good in January. You know what I mean? And that, I saw the fires as we landed being like, finally, we're coming back. Hollywood's going to be back. And yeah, it's crazy out there. What has been y'all's experience?
My experience is it just feels like we're literally keep stripping away layers of people. Since COVID, every year I feel like more and more people I know have to leave Los Angeles, are leaving the business permanently. And every time I think, well, this was it then. Like, the correction's over. You know, I was like, the strike was the worst of it. It's been like 3 more layers are gone since then.
Yeah, it was very naive. When I remember thinking that the strike is the worst of it, you know? Yeah. And like, it is, when you're saying like layers are being stripped back, there's so many ways that phrase has salience, you know what I mean? Like, literally, and also like internally, you know what I mean? Like, it's like your spirit, you're like, everything's gonna be okay, you know what I mean? Like, I've only worked in Hollywood for, I guess, 4 years, you know what I mean? And like, the first 2 years were dramatically good. So I was like, hey, I might not know how to save this money yet, but I can make it. Hollywood's forever. Mm-hmm. And the strike was, I was like, all right, well, I didn't even see that coming, which is dumb because I'm like, oh, I'm a leftist. I know about labor stuff. That was not on my fucking radar. And then it lasted way longer than anyone thought it was going to last. Yes. And then the contraction after that. Karim, what has it been like for you?
Well, you know, I'm in this position where, like, I moved here from New York 3 years ago. I was telling Far earlier, like, and I've been, you know, I moved basically in the second year, the third year of the pandemic, let's say. So I was working during the pandemic, but everything obviously shifted to remote working at home. And since I've gotten here, I've only been working at home on remote jobs. Most of them are East Coast, New York based. So I'm in this like strange position where I'm like, I've been in LA. I definitely feel like I live here. I feel like this is like my new city, even though I'm a New Yorker, like born and bred. But I also feel like I have yet to get a Hollywood job, you know, like I've yet to get an LA job. And I'm so lucky, you know, to have been working. I'm on this film now that I've been it's been like we've had a lot of downtime, but it's been going, and it's still gonna go for like into this year. But it's bad. I mean, my experience is like there was a period right before I moved where I was getting tons and tons of inquiries, or like people reaching out either through my agent or directly. Like all this stuff was bubbling, you know. In 2020, 2021, it was like, and then now it's so dry, and I might have like one or two people reach out, and then it goes away immediately. It's like, hey, we got this thing, and then I'm like, oh, that sounds great. What's good? Let's talk. Nothing. And then it's like, so I know there's like, you know, 600,000 editors out there like just sitting on their couch, like, so the pool of potential people is like that much huger, and so the competition when there is something is that much tougher. So, but I feel like an asshole. Even like, I can't complain at all. I'm so lucky, and people even before the fires, I mean, people in this city have been like struggling beyond belief, and like Far said, people leaving the industry, leaving town. You know, it's been really, really hard, and I think we can expect that. Like there was obviously a bubble, you know, to use that like that term in TV and production in general. And we know it's not going to be that, like, it's not going to go back to that. And so I don't know though, you know, like Far can speak much better to me than I can in terms of like Hollywood. I feel like proper, you know, or like actual like currents of what might be happening concretely, but it's like hard to predict on some level. I think we know it's going to be smaller, you know.
I want to say two things off what you said, which is number one, you know, that thing where you someone hits you and they kind of like get you excited that something can happen, and then you never hear from them again. I've been guilty of that with a lot of people because I get excited, so I'm like calling people. I'm like, how much is this thing, whatever, and I've like learned to temper that impulse because I'm like, bro, this is not a time to get people excited about the work if you don't have the money in your account. Like I try not to call motherfuckers at all now unless I like have the money, because what you've done is you've called somebody, they're gonna make it work, you know what I mean, they're gonna tell you the number. I make budgets all day for everything, for music to for which have like I'm not good at math, but I'm always making budgets, you know what I mean. And so it's like you'll call a friend and, you know, ask them how much would it cost for this thing, and then you get them excited, and then you're like, I actually can't afford, not even that part of it, I just can't do it's not happening, the project's not happening. So now I try to like really be careful because everyone's so like paycheck to paycheck right now, you know what I mean, that it's like you want to respect everyone's time and everyone's like emotional, like for me, I started like consulting and coaching, you know, script stuff, and I got a little annoyed at some people because they would like reach out to me, we'd have a long conversation, and they would be like, okay, this is how much we have, whatever. And these are people that you're friends, and then you never hear from them again. And then it's like, bro, like at least like tell me like it's not happening anymore. You know what I'm saying? And I think that everyone is embarrassed on both sides. Like people are embarrassed that the thing's not happening, and I've been on that side. Mm-hmm. And then people are like annoyed that like you hit me, kind of made me think like, oh, okay, this month is, you know, covered on the mortgage and now it's not. And it's just people, I don't know. It's a tough place to be. I think in everyone's like in the literal economy, and then in everyone's personal economy. And what you were saying, this thing about how like and I never heard you say this, that most of your work is still in New York, but you moved here. I can relate to that a little bit because like, you know, I was living in Oakland right before we moved here, and that was because of Safia's job, because of my wife's job. And I loved Oakland. It was great. I love Oakland. But I didn't get to see that much of it because it was the pandemic. So it was like, oh shit, this cool new city, bam, it's closed. You know what I mean? And then all of my work started remotely, you know, and then we moved here again. I feel like I live in LA. I love LA. I feel like the city's given a lot to me. I've given a lot to the city, but all of my work could have been done from wherever the fuck. And I think about that sometimes where you're like, I mean, I don't think I would be as rooted, you know, and I'm so happy that I'm here. But when the mortgage is expensive and when things aren't totally working out financially, you kind of go, damn, could I be anywhere else? You know what I'm saying? Anywhere else. Because I've actually never been you in the industry have gone to the office and parked your car and ordered Thai food. Yes. I've never done any of that. You know what I'm saying? My shit is all on Zoom.
Yeah, go ahead, Far. You can speak to it, but
it is very different. It is absolutely different culturally. It's a big difference. I mean, when I first began in the industry, I was lucky enough to work on a studio lot for 10 years. It's funny when it feels like a special magical place. You're walking into Warner Brothers, you put up with a lot more crap because of that. It is a funny thing. You have a thicker skin. Why am I doing this? Oh yeah, I feel like I am part of this elite group, even if it's in your own imagination. Even if you're an intern who isn't getting paid, you feel like, oh, this is why I'm going to invest more. This is why I'm going to keep doing this. And when you're doing it from home, it's much easier to be like, why am I? You question it and kind of have a thinner skin and like want to tell people to F off because it's not part of your world. You don't get all those other kind of emotional benefits or imaginary benefits.
Imaginary, but also either it's cooler.
It's cooler.
You know what I'm saying? Like I have friends who like, they're like, oh, here's my office. And I'm like, oh man, here's my office. You know what I mean? But it's, I don't know. It's like, and I hate to be like, because sometimes I feel like I'm taking the corporate side to be like, people need to be back in the office. But I'm just speaking for myself. I would love to be in an office just to put on a shirt and, park the car.
It's the role. You're right. It's the wardrobe. We're putting ourselves in that mode. And, our jobs are so difficult. It's so speculative. There's so much time where you like have to convince yourself this is going to happen. It's a lot easier to do that when you're showing up at an office with a bunch of other people who are invested in the same thing. You can build yourselves up.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting conversation. I mean, so much has gone remote now, obviously. So these jobs, I say they're New York based, but it's like, especially in post-production on these things I've worked on, it's like, it kind of like what you were just saying, it doesn't really even, what does that even mean? Because half or more of all the people working in post on whatever I might be working on are like spread all over literally the world. They might be like in other countries and certainly a lot on the West Coast. But then like the home base might be in New York for the production company or whatever it is. So I think it's like a new world, obviously, in terms of that. I mean, I definitely feel like I really want to work in an office too again. Also because I came to this massive city, I don't know anyone. And I didn't realize until I got here and was working at home for like 2 years, like, oh my God, like when you go to a brand new city, going to work would be one of the organic ways to like kind of start meeting people who are LA people, like for people like us who work a lot, it's like, okay, that's how I'm going to start organically like making relationships. And I'm like, damn, I just been at home, like just work like, and I'm an editor. So it's already like an isolated work, but I feel like after about like, I don't know, especially LA commuting, which I have not yet experienced. And I know that's going to be like a wake up call.
I can't wait to complain about it though. I can't wait. Oh my God, I would be so excited.
And after like 2 days, I'm going to be like, bro, like I miss working at home like a lot right now. Like,
but it can be an option. Go back to that? I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, I think that I have friends that are in rooms where like, they're not always there, but you want to have the option. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like to me, it's interesting. Farhad, you said this thing of like, you seem to imply, and I don't want to, take your words out of context here, but it seemed to imply that people are more irritable when they're working from home. And there's a little more, and I think that there's some truth to that. You know what I mean? Because it's like, my bed is right there. You know what I mean? Like I could just crawl back in it. Like, I don't know why that makes you somehow like, I don't know, less charitable, but it's like, I never thought about that. that.
And our brains make tactile memories. Like it's almost like being in suspended animation. If you spend 2 years at your desk, even if you're talking to different people on the screen, in your mind, you've just been sitting right there. It's all gets smushed together and you won't remember. It's nothing. You haven't made distinct memories, sensory memories, like going to a place, meeting people, spending time with them, all those, like actually that's how we mark our lives. Yeah. It's kind of robbing us of life experience.
That's funny.
I didn't expect that to be so deep.
That's true. That's so weird though, because it's so true. Like when I think back to like 2020 March, when everything shut down, I was working on a job, went home. It kind of all feels like one job, in this way, even though it's been like, I don't know, 8 or something different projects, but it's like that thing where I'm like, but it's all kind of been one job because everything's like in the same exact place on my screen with these faces. And it's just like, it's bizarre, man. And I think it adds to like how it's all a blur. I mean, a lot of things add to like how memory is a blur now in these last few years, especially, but it's like, that's part of it where it's like this weird. And I do miss going to different locations and like being in person with people, like who you're collaborating with. Like there's nothing like that,
I remember certain jobs based on the commute and the parking space.
Yeah.
Like that
Culver
show,
City, Culver City's very own.
The show sucked. Oh, my parking was so good. I would totally do that job again.
Bro, I just want a little advice for the listeners at home. You know, if there's someone, I'm just speaking from personal experience here.
Yeah.
If you're, especially in a writer's room with like 12 people, if someone in the room that you don't like, I would just like take another program and just like put it over their face. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, or I would take that person's face, put it in the corner, and then just like cover it with a calculator or something. I'm like, I don't even have to fucking look at you. But I do think that as funny as that is to me, and as much as I did it all the time.
Yeah, cut to Chris's computer screen after a couple months. It's all Post-its. There's like one little person still left there.
Honestly,
it's just him, his own face. That's what I do. I just show my own.
Shit.
I just show. I literally. I will pin my own face on meetings. Like I do not want to look at people's faces. This is my public confession. See, this might be the type of shit you have to cut out later.
No, why? No, please, come on.
I hired him. He doesn't even want to look at my face. Fuck that guy.
First of all, if your employers are listening to the Chris Gabo show, please subscribe to the Patreon. Patreon.com/. No, but it really is like okay, as funny as it is, and it's true, I also do think it's like, hey, is there perhaps something not good about the fact that like you can just delete a human being and be like, you know what I'm saying? Whereas like in the office, it might feel less good to have to like make small talk with someone you hate. And by the way, I've never hated anyone I work with. So if you're listening to this, I love you. But you know what I mean? But at the same time, then you have to contend with them. And then maybe you look at them and you're like, oh, this person's a dick because they're going through maybe something that I'm going through. Maybe you hate and notice that what you fear in yourself. And maybe there's a little more. And then also you can go to the office and close the door. So there's just like, I don't know. It's...
This is such a core creative dilemma, I feel like, of a writer's room, though. If you're in the position where you get to choose the team and put it together, there's inevitably going to be personalities that you just don't naturally mesh with that are, to put it generously, a challenge. But then what are you getting for that creatively?
Name them in order and I'll just bleep it all.
Yes.
No, but... Sorry, continue.
Yeah. No, but you totally imagine what I'm saying, right? Like, so creatively, maybe it's giving a zest that you wouldn't have. They're different than you. They're different than a lot of the people you like. But when does that cross over to becoming an obstacle, to becoming someone or something that makes you dread being in the room? Then it's gone too far. It's really hard to find a balance.
Well, and then here's a question for you, Mr. Showrunner, right? I think that the Zoom thing... Oh, wait, I just started making a statement. I was trying to phrase it as a question. The question is, do you think that the fact that people are on Zoom makes it like it takes sort of the pressure off the hire a little? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Because you can be like, all right, that person is a psychopath, but they're really good at writing. But check it out. I don't have to actually look at them or talk to them in person.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Okay.
You don't have to worry as much about, is this going to be a team that actually coalesces in person? Because they're not going to be in person.
Whereas like if we're in person, you're like, okay, yes, the script is good. Yes, they have a point of view, but like, is it cool? You know what I mean? Like, do I actually want to, is this person reasonable? Does this person like take showers regularly? Does this person brush their teeth when they fucking put it in their face? Am I trying to tell me about them? You know, it all matters. And I think that there's so much human decorum that has really just been declining, I think, as a result of the fact that we don't really have to deal with each other. You know what I mean? Like, I was back in New York recently and I was so excited to be on the train. I was so excited to like rub shoulders and have to like, oh, let's see what happens. You know what I mean?
I know, same, man. That's like some New Yorker and LA shit. I feel like it's like, because it's like, you know, this is like cliche beyond cliche, but like to be out here, it's just so weird. If you're a New Yorker, to be out here and just like that strange physical disconnection is like, it's so different. And it's like you're on the train. It's not like you talk to anyone on the train, any stranger. Everyone's still like ignoring each other or kind of like pretending no one's there. But it's like in New York, you are forced to like physically, it's like what you were just saying about the writer's room. It's like you're forced to navigate each other, even if you don't even look or speak to each other. It's like, and there's nothing like that. And LA is just so weird like that. It's so different.
I didn't realize it was an East Coast, West Coast thing happening here. That's interesting. I should have like set this up. That's how I'm going to market it. I'm like East versus West. But really, it's far. I have to say something because you're the first writer I've met who's from California that I like. The work, and this is. No, I want to tell you my xenophobia, and you tell me if it's grounded or not, or if it's stupid. But because we used to, I'm a semi-neutral party here because I'm from Florida. All right, my family's in Queens.
That's
you know
right.
what I mean?
I always forget that.
I know.
I lump you in with me as a New Yorker.
I appreciate that. But no, I used to say, and this is very like haughty of me, but this is also before I moved here at all. But I was like, writers from LA, they get in their car and they drive to work and they're like, what would it be like if a guy got into a fight? And in New York, you take the train and you're like, I think I got into a fight on the way here, so I'm just going to tell you what happened. And that was my theory about why New York writers were better. Now tell me whether or not my xenophobia is xenophobic.
You're right, because you've picked a
won't argue
terrible
with me,
sample. No, when I worked in New York many years, the nicest compliment I got is people were always surprised to find out I was from LA. They assumed I was an East Coaster, and to be fair, I didn't grow up in Los Angeles. I came here. I've been here living in Los Angeles as long as I've worked in the industry. I came here for
that's a long fucking time.
Yeah, that is.
If I lived in Paris, France for as long as you've been working in the industry, I'd be like, hello, welcome to here.
That's as long as you've been alive. So yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, but in California, like I would start chatting with somebody at a party, like, and they would be shocked to find out I'm from here. They're like, I assumed you just got here, not that you've been here for 15 years, like. And again, I kind of take it as a compliment that you don't seem like you're from here. It is different. Also, maybe this is a overly simplistic thing, but I, until recently, only took public transportation in Los Angeles.
Wow.
It's different. You know the city when you're on the buses, when you're on the trains, when you're just talking to people, rubbing elbows.
Yeah.
And by the way, New York is one of the nicest cities I have ever been to. When I would arrive from the airport, brand new, I got a huge suitcase, didn't realize how many transfers. Everybody was constantly helping me. They could see that scared look in my eye. And it wasn't like they were like, here, let me help you. No, go, just walk one over. There's an elevator. Yeah. When you get up, turn right. Amazing. Just the level of humanity was amazing there. I think because we're all close together.
See, now here I am to squash the beef, to squash the nationalism, right? Because I do think that and look, if motherfuckers want to fight in the comments about New York versus LA, I love LA. You know what I'm saying? And most of the people who don't like LA or who talk shit about LA is because they don't hang out with people who are from LA. You know what I mean? They're here surrounded by transplants from Montana who came here to like chase the dream, and they don't never been to Inglewood, and that's why they suck, right? But
we're a magnet for the worst.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%, right? But that's not LA's fault, and that's not Angelino's fault, right? And I do think that the thing that, I try to live in LA like it's New York. You know what I mean? And by that, I mean like take the bus, walk around this motherfucker, because that's where, dude, the other day I was on the train and there was a guy behind me who I thought he was wearing a hat, but it was actually a rooster that had been dyed black. And it was not like chained to his head. It was just there like a rooster. I might edit in some footage here because I have some footage and it's crazy. But that's where I was like, oh, as much as like I love New York, right? I'm like, yo, the only thing that makes it iller is just that most people take public transportation, right? Shit is just as crazy, just as interesting, just as brolic. Everything is just as ill here. It's just that if you're in your car, you miss shit.
Well, it's interesting that both of you guys take, and I have yet to take public transportation here, and because I'm just like lazy, but I really want to like do that. I want to like work that into my life because exactly what you guys are saying. But the interesting thing is about a difference with LA and New York too, and I think it's a difference between a lot of places in New York is like segregation, and I mean like class, especially class segregation, and like that's another thing about New York for whatever reason, and it might be in part. I think it's the history of the city, but it's also like the space of the city, just the way it is, especially Manhattan, obviously. It's like you're forced to be on top of each other. But there's this way, obviously class exists everywhere and it's always like different lives and there's always separation. But there's this way in New York where it's just not the same. There's some kind of we're all in this together vibe, like because we're all in this city. And even if you're like, elite or poor working class, whatever, it's like you all got to get on the train together, for instance, And I think taking the public in here, it's very segregated in this city in all these ways, obviously like geographically and like neighborhood wise, but taking the public transportation is a good way to like collapse that shit. Like
100%. And it's also like Safi always says, like, they're not making new space. They're not making new land. So even we'll be watching Succession, I'll be like, that's a huge apartment. And it's also not that big compared. You know what I mean? It's like you have to own Fox News to own something like as big as like the 1-bedroom house that I grew. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's just, whereas in LA, I do think you get a little more bang for your buck, even though it's such a crazy expensive city. But again, like what you're saying, the geography is different. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't, like the phenomenon in New York where you can be like Upper East Side, Upper East Side, Upper East Side, Spanish Harlem, and it's like it's just like, you know, when I lived in Inwood, I was like, yo, I live on the upper West Side. You know what I'm saying? Dykeman is the upper West Side. That it would be interesting if like Beverly Hills was here and you just like 1 foot away, that was Compton. Like that's not how it works. It's so spread out. Everything is so spread out. So like, and again, New York is also very segregated, but it's like there's just less land mass. You know, in Manhattan in particular, it's just not. I mean, there was somebody was, I don't want to fuck this up, but somebody was saying basically that like the Palisades fire is like the length of Manhattan plus some or something, and the Palisades fire is nowhere near Hollywood. You know what I'm saying? So it's like just geographically that it is also very like my New York logic where I'm like everything is just like how many Brooklyns does it fit? You know what I'm saying? Like that's my like units of measurement. But yeah.
It's very much what you were saying, Karim, because I think if you are very much pointed towards control of your life, you want to be West Coast. And as my friends from the East Coast who have migrated here, who've resettled here, it is to kind of boil it down too much. It comes down to control. You can control your space. You don't want to be on a train. You don't want to be around people. You can control even if you're in traffic, that is your car, your space, your home, your yard, your ceiling. Don't have to hear other people. Don't have to be part of a collective. It became so evident, obviously, in the pandemic and how we are all related. It depends on it matters what you do. But people in Montana, people in the Central California didn't have to think about those things because they weren't getting on an elevator with anyone else that night. So you can live free totally how you want. Like it becomes a really binary choice.
It's funny. It goes back to the thing you were just saying when we were talking about the Zoom thing of like the pluses and the minuses of like getting to be on your own versus like having to deal with people, like having to be in each other's faces and like how that's hard, but it's also like that's what we do. Like we're human beings. We have to do that, you know? So, but obviously I'm like a lot of people where I'm like, it kind of quote unquote feels better to be on my own a lot of the time. You know, like I love it. It feels so nice and comfortable and like a warm bath to just be in my own space.
Hell is other people. Heaven is other people. You know what I mean? It's with the right people. I mean, we had our friends, you know, here who were from the refugee episode who were literally, you know, came from the fire. I was like, I was mad when they left. I was offended because we were having so much fun. And I just thought I was like putting little replacement figures in my head, doing the math differently. And I was like, anyone else, even if their house was on fire, I'd be like, hey, what are your plans? Like, how long are you going to be here? Like, I've been here 15 minutes. I'm like, yeah, but I need you to get the fuck out. You know, so it just is like, it depends who it is. You know what I'm saying? And especially now, I mean, see, this is my clunky transition, trying to transition us, but you know, it's a wild time to be here. You know what I'm saying?
Can I say one thing?
Please, you can say 10 things.
I have to apologize to you because
on camera.
Yeah,
zoom in, Josh. Whatever he's gonna see. I mean, this is our first apology. Oh, no matter what he says, I'm gonna cry. Okay?
No. It's but the night of the fires, you called me, and I feel like in that way of like calling a neighbor big brother of like, hey, what is going on? What's happening? And I now feel like maybe I over minimized. I was like, don't worry, it's fine, it's no big deal, it's never going to get to you in your building. And then like 15 minutes later there was an evacuation alert. Like, it's never going to get to you. You know, and part of that was I was like, it was chaotic in my house. Our friends were staying with us because there was no electricity at their house, and it felt like people were freaking out, and that was my energy at the time. I was like, I'm trying to calm people down, but obviously I didn't want to lull you into a false sense of security either. And then weirdly, I had a deja vu of like a couple years earlier where I was like, Chris, there won't be a strike. Don't worry, there's not going to be a strike. This is all hot air. There will not be a strike. Chris, the fire is not coming. Don't worry.
I thought you were gonna say, "Don't worry about the virus. This virus, this so-called virus that's
in China. It's so far." It's like this is a dumb joke, but there was a guy's dying, right? And he's got on his deathbed. He has like 14 minutes to live, and they're like, "Bring his wife in. Bring his wife in." And he says, "Honey, I want to tell you something." And she's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm having a realization." She was like, "Tell me." She's like, "When I lost my job, you were there." She's like, I know. It's like, when my brother stopped talking to me, you were there. He's like, I know. When I got cancer, you were there. And she's like, I know, babe, I'm there for you. She's like, no, I'm starting to think that you're the problem. You know what I mean? So, I'm not a comedian, guys. That was stressful. The second I said I have a joke, I was like, I'm not, But anyway, no, but it is, no, I really appreciated that
These
call.
fires started right after you moved here.
I was going to say.
All this bad stuff has only been since you, wow.
If you had admitted that you started the fire, I was like, subscribing, going through the roof. Subscribing, Jesus Christ. I can't speak English. English is my second language, so that's what I'm hoping that the readers, the listener, bro, please.
Well, that's why you have editing, man. You're gonna be the editing.
I'm not
master.
editing this shit, bro. I don't have time. So whatever the mistake is, unless you call me and are like, that thing I said about my uncle, please censor it, No, but it's no, I appreciate that far. I accept your apology. Thank you. Isn't it horrible when someone accepts your, it's like you say something, you're like, hey, I want to apologize. The only proper answer is like, bro, no, you're good. If they're like I've done that before, like my apology not quite sincere, and then I'm like, hey, I want to apologize for this, and like, I accept your apology, and I'm like, it's like that Walter White thing where he tells Skylar he forgives her. He's like, I forgive you, and hugs her, and they zoom in on her face. She's like, I'm gonna kill him. You know what I'm talking about? Okay. Post-election 2025. That was not my greatest transition, but I had to, just get us in there. What the I mean, like, I've heard people who think that, people whose politics I like, who are like, no, Trump's going to be good. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. People are going to start buying again, And I'm like, that's not a position that I would take publicly, or, oh shit, we're on a public forum. All right, well, but I don't have a position. I have a question. That's a very, that is a very Joe Rogan thing to be like, I'm just asking questions, man. But I really are you guys, have you heard chatter? Have you experienced any, how do you think that, because one thing that I'm already seeing is that, and look, when Far and I met, our show was very political. You know what I'm saying? Our show was had a fucking point of view, and it was an extremely leftist point of view, and it was an extremely anti-imperialist point of view. And actually, the reason why have you seen Your Honor, that Bryan Cranston joint?
I haven't, no. I know the show though, but I haven't seen it.
It's crazy. I just finished it. It's crazy. Did you watch any of it?
Yeah, I started watching the first episode.
It's interesting. I didn't mean it, by the way, make you think you had to watch Your Honor in order to come on the pod.
You give me a lot of stuff to watch, just to be fair. I cannot keep up with your playlist.
Look, this was just a friendship. Well, no, because it actually, for our show, I was actually shocked because season 2, I think, came out recently of that show. I was surprised. I want to give you. You care about spoilers, Kareem?
It's okay.
All right. See that soft? It's okay. He does care about spoilers.
No, I do, but not. I think it's okay for this show.
I just started watching it.
I'm probably not going to watch it.
No.
Oh, all right. No, never mind. I am going to have to edit this out. Yeah. No, but just that, let me, in the broad strokes, just say that. Look, I don't think this is even a spoiler. The cops do really bad things, and that surprised me, because what I've been hearing from buyers, from execs, is like, hey, kid, we love your spunk. Cut that shit the fuck out. We're trying to have roller skating babysitters solving crimes that, you know what I mean? They're not trying to, I've been told specifically that, we're not doing political messages. We're not doing, and by that political message, again, it means political messages from the left. It means imperial critique. That's what they're really saying. And so I was surprised at how hard this show went. You know what I mean? We'll have
Isn't this pre that change? Your Honor is, let's assume it was conceptually that was developed 5 years ago minimum, right? So I don't think it would, in this environment, it would happen in the same way.
Well, and then makes me wonder about their season 3. Because I think, and again, okay. I'm not going to look it up because I'm not going to, but I think season 2 came out, I don't know, but here's the thing. Recently is a free-floating signifier. Post-COVID, I say the other day, and I'll tell a story, and then I'm like, that was 6 years ago. You know what I mean? Nothing happened the other day, right? but yeah, so that was why I had brought that show up. But I think that, like, so far, and again, it's only been, what's January, hasn't been a month of 2025, but I do think that there's definitely conservative, and I don't mean conservative in the political well, it is all political, but I think that people are not taking risks right now, for sure. Even when they like something, you know what I mean? That's the first thing I've noticed. I'm curious if there's going to be, a lot of people think that Trump is good. I don't even know what good for the economy means, to be honest with you. And I do think that, like, I'm hesitant. That guy is antichrist. So I'm just hesitant to, like, give anything positive there. But it's a question. I've heard people say different things, and I just wonder what you guys have been hearing and what you guys think. And, if you like to make predictions about the next 6 months in a public forum, like, I'm open to that, And then if they make a prediction, please zoom close, just them, just their eyes even,
Well, you were making me think. I had a show that we edited. I was working for Vice, which is no longer now. Yeah. This was like, I was already here. This was like 2022, I think. It was 3-hour doc series, like a true crime series, but it was a fascinating story that dealt with, like, all these important themes, like male toxic masculinity and homophobia, but it was also like just a straight up true crime doc series with this amazing twist in it, and it looked great. The DP was amazing. It was so good, and they could not get it. Still has not gotten sold. It's not aired. It's not seen the light of day. And I think it's also because of what we were talking about, of just like all the changes that people are aware of like in the recent years, the slowdown in general. But they took it around to everyone, and people were like, this is too political. We're not going to do this, like Netflix and all the others, And this again was before, this was like 2 years ago or whatever. I will say, I mean, it's, I guess, like a couple of answers is, like, on one level, we don't know, because we know this guy is all about chaos and unpredictability. It's already started. It's just like constant narcissistic volatility. But there are certain things that we can assume, first because he says it all the time, so we can assume certain things will happen in the big picture, but also we've already seen corporate leaders caving, and self-censorship, like acquiescing before you need to. We saw it with, like, the Washington Post and the LA Times, and we've seen, like, the big social media people and the Jeff Bezos is, like, bend the knee to the dude before the inauguration and give him $1 million or whatever they did. So I think we can assume that some version of that will happen in our industry. But beyond that, I'm sure you probably have some more specific thoughts, but it's really hard to predict. I think the biggest thing is still that what we were just saying, like, things there's been a condensation. What's the word I want? Like a
contraction.
Mm-hmm. And that is here to stay. And so, I don't know. We're going to see what's happened. But the other point, which you just asked, Chris, is this is an oligarchy situation we have now. Mm-hmm. And so, like, the idea that the economy is going to be good for people, the idea that the 70+ million people who voted for this guy, that their lives are going to get better, is fucking get it out of your mind. Like, there's no way. These are the richest people in the world. They've now taken power. They're going to be they're thieves, man. They're all about taking the wealth for themselves, number one. If there's some trickle down, fine. But it's like, they're all about getting there. It's like Putin's getting $1 trillion and putting it away somewhere. That's what these people are about. So I don't know. I mean, the industry will still exist for sure. Like, Hollywood is going to be Hollywood, and TV and film are going to be existing. But I don't know that beyond that, it's hard to predict,
I agree very much with that. This is an observation. I'm not making a judgment, but I think a significant portion of Hollywood right now in the Trump era is relieved. Not that because they necessarily like his values or the mandate he came with. I'm not saying there's a bunch of people who are racist or bigoted, but it's very familiar. It's going back to something predictable and familiar versus where they felt for a long time every year, every 6 months, the rules kept changing.
Say more about that. What do you mean by the rules?
I mean things about the new revelations and understandings of equity and social justice. New definitions.
That's over. Thank God.
But really, it was suddenly, if you haven't, human beings take some time to adjust. If you considered yourself a tastemaker, and then suddenly an article just came out and said, no, you are absolutely a misogynist. You're like, your value system and the things you thought were good you were upholding the colonial patriarchy. And if you're a person of a certain age, that shakes you up. You don't want to be seen as being on the wrong side of things. And I would hear from so many, primarily men, that I'm afraid of what to say in the room. I'm afraid of what to do. I feel like I have to censor myself. It's a feeling that many of the rest of us have had always, like if you feel like you're a little bit of an outsider, but clearly there's a certain segment that didn't feel that. It was an unwelcome, unfamiliar feeling. And now it's gone.
You think it's gone?
Well, no, I'm sorry. It's not gone, but it is not as dangerous.
The reaction, the swing back is now in power. It's like is now like legitimately dominant in a sense. I think that's a really interesting point. I think for sure we've seen it. Like I think about it in comedy, specific sector.
Now you have to tell a joke
all the time,
and I promise
I'm not going to tell a joke. If I do, I'm not going to be like, I'm going to tell a joke first. I'll tell you that because it's not going to go well. But this whole thing in comedy of like the anti-woke, kind of movement is totally, I think, what you're saying. And I think I'm sure that's a good point. I'm sure we're going to see versions of that too, which is like a swing back, a push back to the progressive like pushes that we've seen in media and culture in the last period. But I will say this, and you made me think of this as far as like, I've been thinking a lot about this. One hopeful silver lining that I have in my mind about Trump now is that in moments like this is also when resistance happens big time. We saw it happen with his first, when he as soon as he was first president, and in that first period, a lot of movements we saw spring up. And I think it's in direct response to the fact that this is so stark. It's so visible. It's so blatant, the oppressive nature of this person and his movement. So I think that gives me hope. And I think it's like, what's the version of that hopefully we'll see within creative people and within, our industry, it's like, so I do think that's very true. What you're saying, we're going to see that. We're going to see like a strengthening of confidence about a reactionary like perspective culturally, like, oh yeah, this is okay. Just like you said, like, finally we can relax. We don't have to be woke.
And I'm glad you said swing back, Karim, because that is part of this process of progress. You always see that historically, right? Big step forward, the swing back correction. People, no, that was too much, too quickly. But that crumbles.
Right. The reaction.
This is the process.
Yeah.
And Farhad, when you say that, like, people, there's a certain segment of the population in Hollywood who were like totally freaked out about Black Lives Matter, Me Too, and that whole era, and are now like, breathing a sigh of relief. How do you think that's going to affect the creative that gets through? Because I imagine, and again, I don't know for a fact, but I'm imagining like who you're talking about. There might be like high level creators, but also like, high level executives and high level, people who have their finger on the button of what goes and what doesn't go. You know what I mean? So like, how do you think that is affecting? I don't know. Like, what would you say to somebody who is maybe has their foot in the door, got their foot in the door in the last 2-3 years, thought they were coming into one industry, or maybe they're on their second, third job, and like, what would you, if you had to talk to a person like that, what would you tell them to expect?
Who am I talking to?
You're talking to...
This is, look, always, as we all know, always been a very competitive place and a really competitive field, because there are more people who want to work in this industry, what we understand as this industry, than there are slots. And so you get in versions of the best. You get a high caliber of competitive people out here. That isn't changing. There are definitely some circumstantial inequities and timing issues. So it can be a particularly tough time. And I think from a few years ago and going forward, it is still tough. people need to be really careful financially of like what their longevity would be like. But I think we're just in a great way, we're only finding more and new ways to consume media and want media. I think the best thing about coming to a place like Los Angeles or being in this industry right now, being in the hub, is who you're going to meet. I don't know that our infrastructure will even withstand the next 10 years.
What do you mean by that?
What we know is the Hollywood studio system. I think it's getting less and less relevant, but it will not be that difficult for the creative individuals, all the craftspeople and artists, to branch out into what the next thing is, right? And I think part of the strength of that comes from the connections we make, the people we know. There's only so many of us to go around, but how we're distributing that stuff, how we are selling it, that could very much change. And it seems to only, in the long run, becoming more democratic, more equitable. But the transition is going to be rough.
Do you think that there is, are you anticipating a sort of reactionary backlash to the last, sort of 4 years in Hollywood as a result of, like, do you think that, for example, like, I can't imagine necessarily, because of the years that I came into this industry, like, I can't imagine a prestige HBO drama with like a Trump supporter, or even like I can't imagine Woody Harrelson in a MAGA hat, basically, like, with where there's like no critique of the character, you know what I'm saying, being like as big as Succession necessarily, right? But again, Succession, that's a show that is about, right-wing, oligarchs, right? But the lens is so clearly fuck these people, and the lens is so clearly we're laughing at them, you know what I'm saying? And obviously because of the groundedness of those performances, we like, there's moments where you love Brian Cox, you know what I'm saying? But it's not, it is, there's a wink there, and there is a point of view that these people are destroying the earth, right? But I can't necessarily imagine like an uncritical protagonist that is like, that believes what Trump believes necessarily in prestige television, but like maybe that changes. I don't know, right? So I'm kind of, those are the sort of am I making sense of what I'm asking? No, you can say no.
I mean, well, you're making a couple points there, I felt like. And yes, I get that. I think there's going to be a concentrated move to try to include that Trump point of view, like in a mindful way, which is, Karim and I were speaking about this earlier. Hollywood always tends to overdo whatever they set as the goal. Like it just swings out too far. And like, maybe this is a side note, I think Succession is a difficult show to take lessons from because it is so good. Like, I don't know that it is necessarily indicative of the time it was made. Clearly it was, but it was such great writing, but all comedy writers.
Yeah.
Right.
There was a couple playwrights.
There's a couple of playwrights. That's true. Yes.
Around.
Yeah. You always got to squeeze that in there. Yeah. No.
Listen, I don't even barely identify as a playwright anymore, but I know when they make things better.
No, funny playwrights. But but so impressive, and such we could talk about Succession purely in terms of like language and choreography for hours, right? But I think so many people misjudged it, and frankly, it was a detriment when it came out. They were like, I am so sick of watching the Rupert Murdoch family, the Trump family, those people on television. I'm not going to watch a show about that. I heard that from so many people.
I felt that initially, and then this show sucked me in.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the things that I learned working on our show was that I was like, oh, I know a lot about the people I hate. I actually I just never wrote them because that's not who I wanted to see. But I was like, I'm a fucking anthropologist in this motherfucker, bro. Like, I know what these people are like because I think about them. And then I realized that you can, the two first lessons that I learned in Hollywood, I was like, yo, write big parts for white people if you can find them and kill somebody as soon as possible. And then like that those are the two things that I thought. I was like, okay, that and once
good. Concrete advice. That's
it
good.
is concrete advice, bro.
All you young writers out there.
Bro, I gave Safi that advice, and her pilot is woo. You know what I'm saying? Like seriously, I was like, please, because
big parts
for white people,
big parts for white people,
and kill somebody as soon as possible.
See, I never.
And you two could
try
be
to write
transitioning from editing to we be pitching tomorrow, baby. But I wanna. There's so much going on that I want to
just say one quick thing that you made
please.
me think. I just okay. Speaking of prediction, I don't know how. I feel like we're gonna see Taylor Sheridan fucking esque shows coming out that are not Taylor Sheridan.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Because
I bet you they're already in the works.
Yeah, first of all, because it's a juggernaut, regardless. So that's how it is. You're gonna see more in that vibe. But we're gonna. I'm surprised we haven't already. Now that I'm saying that, but like now we've got Landman. But in terms of what you're talking, I think what you were saying is like concretely, politically right-ish, or even not-ish vibes in terms of the content and in terms of the actual shows and movies. To me, Taylor Sheridan is like probably the biggest example of that. We were talking earlier about like a little less concretely and more kind of abstractly, like this push now to go back, I don't know if you want to say backwards, but to go back to a pre-Prestige era TV vibe. And like now this conversation is making me think that's an interesting thing. Like, do we think that's in some way reactionary in a way, like culturally? Maybe it's great. You could have a show like The Pit. We were talking about The Pit as an example. You could have one of those shows that's encased in that kind of form, but it's like politically great. It's got all kinds of political good things going on in it. I mean, The Pit has like a lot of diversity and has a lot of stuff that it's like
that's about Brad Pitt
taking on.
Yes,
yes, The Pit. Finally the biopic, the origin story.
Okay, I don't know. I thought I'd seen all the television there was to see, but I guess not.
Oh, The Pit is this new like ER. It's kind of like the ER. Although now the joke is like ER, they're getting sued by Michael Crichton, I guess. So it's like it's not really ER, but it's basically ER. Noah Wiley plays the lead, and
They're
it's
gonna
like
win that lawsuit.
Emergency
it's
room.
Very ER.
Yeah, it's totally ER. And it's on HBO Max. It's like this new.
Check out my new show, Order and Law. You know what I mean? But continue. I cut you off.
That's it. I mean, it's just making me think like that. To what extent are we going to see more of that kind of trend? And to what extent is that even political? To what extent is that even part of this conversation about how is that related to Trump? Far was talking about how you're working on a pilot that's set in Jacksonville and how there's now, and The Pit is set in Pittsburgh. And now there's this like desire from execs to like have shows that are not just LA and New York, but it's like shows that are set more in like the middle of America,
What we would have called flyover. Yeah. I very much agree with you. I think part of the swing against prestige is this cultural thing. But I also think, funny enough, is what you were saying earlier about second screen. I think we got so much prestige television, which can be exhausting, which is television you really have to pay attention to. And I think in a blunt way, the programmers are saying people want to have the TV on when they're doing laundry, when they're cooking. It's familiar. They want to be able to just
that's what podcasts are for. Stop fucking with my money, bro. Why are you putting this into the ecosystem? Sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, but that's it. Like, it's what TV began as, right? The radio play. Like, I can just listen to it and figure out what's going on. Don't get too cinematic on me. Yeah. Like, then I got to pay attention. It gets tiring.
Well, I think this is a great place to take a break and hear some new music. And because I'm going to put these threads together. You're going to be like, man, his segues suck, but he puts the threads together good in the B block. All right. This is a song called Mistakes by Shaun Peace and my dear friend Nate Marshall, both dear friends. It's a really dope joint. Both cats out of Chicago, and it has a good title because right now I think that perhaps the world is contending with a millennia of mistakes. So I'm gonna play this joint and we'll get back into it in the B segment, and look forward to talking more.
Wake up every morning and make the same mistakes again. Just when I think I'm learning, I make the same mistakes again. I can only get so far, then I make the same mistakes again. Never thought it'd be so prideful, stubborn, foolish, foolish. How you so damn smart but still so stupid, stupid, superhuman, still a human. Sometimes you move so fast you just get swept up in the movement. Even Achilles got his heel, even Superman got his kryptonite. Got no hands on the wheel, praying I don't crash tonight and make the same mistakes again. And make the same mistakes again.
Sorry, but I'm not good. That's the kind of thing that's difficult to say. Good, but I'm not great. Every time I get close, I be getting in my way. My self-care is a long bath, baptism in the guilt of a long past. My self-care is embarrassment, researching and reading on all these therapists. My self-care don't include follow through, hiding in the house couple days in pajama shoes. Some call me activist, some call me scholar too. Some never call, after all it's the hardest truth. Love liquor like my granddad did. He got Alzheimer's and his mind is loose. And I should probably stop before we get that big, but sometimes I wouldn't mind so forgetful too. Lot of mistakes is habitual, like B. Trying to live by these principles, but high key, I creep. Sometimes when I make mistakes, I flee or I leave. End up in the same old place, cause I don't like me.
Wake up every morning and make the same mistakes again. Just when I think I'm learning, I make the same mistakes again. I can only get so far, then I make the same mistakes again. Never thought it'd be so hard, but I make the same mistakes again. Every morning and make the same mistakes again. Just when I think I'm learning, I make the same mistakes again. I can only get so far, then I make the same mistakes again.
That was Mistakes by Shaun Peace and Nate Marshall, representing Chicago, Illinois, one of the great American cities. First of all, I just want to say that I really, I feel very, like I did my job as a producer today, just like I could just watch y'all talk and have this conversation and I would be satisfied as a listener and an audience member, you know what I mean? Like I often say about, about TV, about music, but especially, now with this lens on like a podcast, it's like, yo, I'm a user and a pusher. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to give you anything that I don't want. And already I was like patting myself on the back because I was like, Karim, Farhad, I know you're not Muslim, but Muslim sounding motherfuckers talk about how this shit is ill. You know what I mean? I wanted to get into this. Well, first I wanted to make a slight prediction and see what you guys think, right? I mean a prediction as much as like I'm trying to do the math, right? Because if you think, you're like, okay, after George Floyd's murder, there was a lot of like Hollywood was like, we're so sorry. I know this doesn't have anything to do with it, but we will do any, like, what do you need from us? And they hired people, right? A lot of people with a point of view towards diversity, a point of view toward representation. And by the way, like, I had critiques of that at the time because I was like, I don't think you guys really care about this thing, right? But watching something like Your Honor, I'm like, yo, that's satisfying to me narratively. It's satisfying to me as an actor. The score is good. Like everything's dope. You know what I mean? And it's like reckoning with like real issues, but it doesn't feel like issue television. Because I hate it when somebody is like, you know, the show is so important. I'm like, I have a sense that it's going to bore me. I can just tell, you know what I mean? You still have to, like, just because you're writing about a political issue that you have even if I agree on the point of view, that doesn't let you off the hook to entertain me. You know what I'm saying? I'm still need to be entertained.
Absolutely.
Right? And so you think that, like, okay, the conversations I was having with executives even 2 years ago, right, were like, your voice is perfect. The point of view is, we want this exact thing, whatever. And I'm sure they were saying that to a lot of other writers. And also, and this is where my head is at, other people that they were bringing in on the executive side to help be the younger tastemakers, the tastemakers with their finger to the pulse, whatever. My contention is that those people, because I know some of them personally, are still working, right? And they were hired for a specific point of view that they were told. And by the way, when I was coming up, I mean, dude, one of the first, I don't know if I've told you, I've definitely not told you this story. I don't think I've told you this story. When I was in college, I was like 22, and I had written this pilot.
We're talking about 3 years ago.
You motherfucker. I am 30. I'm a 30. I wish, bro. I wish if I was still that age, I would be trying to shave my face and be on Wizards of Waverly Place. You know what I'm saying? But when I was in college, I had this show that was like a 28-minute dramedy thing that was about a subject matter that I've now since cannibalized many times, but like it was from my days as a home attendant. And the whole thing was that, like, this guy was taking care of this kid with a disability who was like, I mean, the family that I took care of was white, but I was like, oh, I made them like rich Arabs, right? And I thought it was really interesting. I thought I was doing a thing. And this, I'm going to say their name and then I'm going to bleep it. So, well, you know what I mean? This guy who, like, you know, now I know what it means. He had like this big deal at 21st Century Fox or whatever. Like, somebody hit me and introduced me to him, and they started developing the idea. And then we had like, more meetings. I met him more times than I met with you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I thought we were like selling this, you know? And then in one meeting, there was like this, it was like issue 33 on this list. And it was like, the Middle Eastern family is a contentious element in the marketplace if it's not homeland. And they gave me that note, and I was like, well, I'd like to keep it if that's okay. And the next thing that happened was I got a 2-word email that said, let's chat. And then I called this guy and he was like, let's stop while we're behind. That's all he said. He hung up, right? So I always thought that, like,
let's stop while we're behind.
Isn't that hard? That's kind of, even though I hated him, I was like, that's kind of awesome. Let's stop while it's like some mafia shit. It was dope. So I hope you're getting Far's face, because that is good shit. So I thought, right, I was like, the lesson here, and by the way, I was not very politically sensitive. It was not like I was just like, it was representation politics. It was just like me. It was characters that I had seen in the world that I wasn't like saying something about Palestine. It was nothing. I was just like, these people are rich and they're Arab. You know what I mean? So I think that the lesson that I learned there, and the lesson that a lot of my friends learned in different ways trying to get into the industry, was like, yo, cut that shit out. Write white people. Write shit that people want to see. You know what I'm saying? Which is like hot blonde girls surfing or something. You know what I mean? So I was ready to sort of, you know, bifurcate parts of myself in order to work, right? And the thing, you know, post 2020, I guess, or around that time, is that people were being told, no, the thing that you thought we didn't want, that's what we want, right? So if you think about the executives that got hired under that mandate, what are, like, if there's truly a contraction and truly like going to be a pulling back of the type of content that we're making, like, are those people gonna leave? Are those people gonna remain in the industry? Are those people now at odds with the person that they like that hired them? You know what I'm saying? It's just, I said I was gonna make a prediction, but really I'm just kind of like, I'm wondering about how the decisions that were made on the executive level in the last, I don't know, you could say even longer. You could say like since 2016, how those people, and because they're still here. You don't, like, people, I mean,
exactly.
That's the thing.
Yes. Yeah. The people are here. That when we're talking about all the social changes happen, but the core of leadership positions at these companies we're talking about, because there's not a lot of people at the agencies, at the studios, at the management companies, among the distributors. They're the same people. You know, so their values can only change and evolve so much, right?
And the thing is that, again, it's like maybe not about value. Like, I've had people tell me straight up, they're like, bro, I believe what you believe. And whenever someone tells me that, I usually think that maybe they're lying. Right. But they're like, we need to sell this. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, how do and you can't even fault them. I'm not mad when honestly, when someone tells me that, I appreciate it.
I think you also have to be careful about those kinds of arguments that you are hiding behind business, because I mean, coming up as a young development executive for decades, we were always told, yeah, and I would really love to tell this urban story, which is like a black story, but it will not sell overseas. It will not sell in Asia. It is not popular. And there was some truth to that, but I know in my heart a lot of people were using that as a blanket excuse because they didn't want to do those stories. I think there's a lot of things you can hide behind when you have your own personal agenda, but you can just put it on the market, the industry. It's not me. It's the lowest common denominator is going to keep us from doing that thing.
That's very, very astute and helpful to like frame a lot of the conversations that I've been having, because on some level, you're like, you want to, it's a very neat trick to go, hey, me and you, kid, we believe the same shit. It's that idiot, which, by the way, when they're talking about flyover, I know like some of the smartest people I know are from the middle of the country, right? And they're denigrating a person who like doesn't exist. It's a straw man. They're being like, oh yeah, something. I'm sure you've heard it called something. Something that'll be like, oh, Sally from Kansas doesn't want to see that shit. And I'm like, bro, Sally from Kansas is a figment of your imagination. Like, she might come in the Nielsen numbers and there's like demographics, but like, you're not talking about a real person. You're trying to put your arm around me as like fellow coastal elite. Like, I believe what you believe, but we're trying to get this money in the international market, in a flyover state market, whatever. So like the phrase hiding behind the market is very helpful to hear, especially from someone who's actually works in the industry.
And it was, look, just in a more basic way to look at it, for so many of the most powerful people in these industries, their power got taken away by new social norms, right? I mean, when you hear Mark Zuckerberg, and I'm not one of those people who like thinks Mark Zuckerberg is the devil or anything like that. I think we've got much actual bigger devils in American media, but it's fair. That's legitimate. But you can hear his frustration of like, for his company was like taken away from him, right? Who were all these people who were sitting in judgment of him and what he was trying to do, who were policing him in the company that he started? Like, I think that is I don't think a lot of people are saying that quiet part out loud, that my power got taken away by some 20-something who lives on Twitter.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking. Because I think, to answer your thing, Chris, is like, it's important to always remember, first of all, everything is always a struggle. Like, everything's always like this dialectic. So it's like, there's nothing decided. Like, there's no like dominant cultural force that's just decided. There's always going to be a struggle, between like the progressive forces and the other side. And a big part of the whole Trump movement is because of all the pushes and the gains that were made in terms of like on the progressive side of things, of people of color, and the Me Too movement was a huge thing, obviously. And it's like, I think that's been part of why the Trump movement exploded, is because we were talking about it before we started recording, of like this, the white victimization thing of like, wait a minute, this used to be, there was a sense of entitlement about this used to be my world, much more than it is now. And so I think that, to a certain extent, all those gains are still here to stay, including in our industry. And I think that's why the point that a lot of those people who got those positions are still there is really important to remember. And I think it's like, that's what I was saying earlier, is like, we have to see what is the form of that progressive side of things going to take in this next period, because it will be there. It's not like there's not going to be a progressive push, both politically but also culturally, and also within our industry. Like, there still is all the voices. I'm trying to remind myself, there's still 70+ million people who voted, who agree with us on this thing, and then there's however percentage of the 110 million or whoever that didn't vote that think this guy is a devil. So it's like, it's not like it's majority. I mean, I guess technically it is majority popular, or most, the popular vote, but there's still a massive numbers of people in this country who are on the progressive side of things and who see reality right now for what it is. And so I think that's also obviously present in our industry, and that's what we have to hold on to in terms of like hope. But it's just like, what is that going to look like? You know, remains to be seen. Obviously, it's like hard to say.
We're in a unique position, right? Because we keep saying Hollywood, and we do work in Hollywood. Really, it's we make culture, right? And we make cultural product. And one of the great ironies of the reactionary imagination is that even when they have the presidency, they're like, but we've been boxed out of the culture. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, it's so funny, like being in this industry and having certain politics and knowing friends that you're like, yo, the idea that like Hollywood is some sort of like left-wing bashing of anything is like, I mean, that the only people who say that have never been here. You know what I'm saying? But it is part of the, again, like the reactionary mindset is that like, even when they have the Supreme Court and the presidency, that they're still sort of culturally outside of the mainstream, you know what I mean? Because art is made by, you know, or whatever, mainstream art is made by cultural elites. And like, there's some truth to that, you know what I mean? And part of me glibly wanted to be like, oh, thank God. But at the same time, it's like, I do think that, I don't know, I'm just curious at what, especially because if you think about like, conservatism is largely historically, you know, it's a class issue. So it's like the more money you make, the more you're like, yeah, I'm going to vote for Republican policies because they affect me, right? And if you think about the top of whoever's actually pressing the button to get these shows made, you got to imagine what those people's point of view is. So I'm just wondering, not trickle down in the sense of economic, but trickle down in the sense of like, how is that point of view going to filter down to the things that we get to write, the things that you get to edit? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just, that's what I have my eye on in the next, you know, coming 6 months.
I realize a generational difference specifically between you and I, because I know you.
Did you grow up with Blockbuster?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the store?
No, well, this is just very personal to me, so it may not apply at all, but I grew up in America learning how to hide, right?
I mean, you're Iranian in Hollywood, bro. You're Muslim in Hollywood. Right. Like, that's crazy.
Right. But that is it. I was born in Los Angeles, but I was 5 years old when the Iran hostage crisis happened, and everyone, you know, most of my family had immigrated to California prior to that, but my grandmother was always like, my grandmother lived in Inglewood. When we would go to the store, we'd go to Gottschalk's, she's like, you don't tell anybody you're from Iran. You're Italian. You're Greek.
Mamma mia. Yeah. Is that why you got the mustache like that?
Yeah, that's okay. Good. That's exactly. But it was just ingrained. Like, you hide. Yeah. You would go. I mean, that was, I think, part of it. Just naturally, Farhad became Far, but back then it was Fred. It's like, so it wasn't assimilate because out of pride. It was assimilation out of fear. Like, when the hostage crisis, my grandmother nailed in all these flags in her front lawn, like super jingoistic stuff, because I don't want anyone to come burn my house down.
You know, I really appreciate that perspective, because it's like, you know, my manager, Leslie Conliffe, shout out Leslie, who doesn't even know I have a podcast, but you know, she's been working in Hollywood as long as you have. And, you know, she's a black woman from Canada who like, and I'm like, when she tells me stories, I'm like, bro, what the fuck? They're not cool. They're like, she'll be like, oh yeah, that happened. And that guy, and I'm like, dude, I mean, there was like an SNL thing about this where like, you know, there was like, you know, 20-year-old, you know, women sort of from the Me Too generation talking about, you know, somebody saying something slick to them on set, and they would have like an 80-year-old actress who'd been in Hollywood as a woman for, you know, 60 years. And she's like, yeah, well, they used to give me Quaaludes and hit me out with the cattle prod and then put me back in the coffin. They'd be like, what? This story is like the stories that you think are bad, and then you hear people who've been here for longer. It's like insane. So I appreciate you sharing that perspective, because yeah, like, I mean, it was really, I mean, meeting you and Rand at the time, I didn't, it was very, it's been very informative to hear how you guys have managed to, I mean, this game is last man standing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, most people aren't still doing this thing. And for you to, you know, be coming from that background and still be working. Yeah. I mean, my generation, I don't know that the impulse to hide is the same. You know what I'm saying? Well, I mean, I don't know. I think I did have the impulse to hide and to censor early on. And then I came in a moment where the thing that I thought was going to not make me work was why I worked. And so that's, I think, why I'm like particularly generationally freaked out about this coming moment, you know?
Well, look, you're an amazing storyteller. I know you can adapt to whatever you need to. But what is the degree? What I'm most interested in is with the natural self-censorship. Before, like, when are you killing ideas before you even verbalize because of this is going to be an uphill battle, or I'm more reticent to say something really personal when I feel like it's going to be almost a violent reaction, when I feel like it is like there's going to be these categorical denials of who I am and what I want to say.
Man, that makes me think like 30 things are the same. No, Karim.
Well, there's something I wanted to say that you just hit on, Far, which is so important right now. And it's like, because we're talking about kind of like explicitly right-wing, let's say, perspectives, and explicitly more politically progressive or left-wing perspectives, and what's that going to look like. But there's a very important thing that I think I've noticed, and I kind of feel like we are all susceptible to it, especially in this country, which is just cynicism, you know, just like disengaging. And it doesn't even have to be politically. It's just like kind of what you're also saying too, where it's like quitting before you have to in terms of like what you want to say. And it's like, I've been thinking about that a lot, because we only have to look at history to know how dangerous that is to do in times like this. Like, the last thing you want to do is be silent and like not and stay disengaged, even if you in your mind agree, you know, or as I say, you disagree. I hate Trump, I hate fascism, fine, but I'm just like, I can't deal. I gotta like put my head in the sand, which I totally get. Like, I have those impulses too, because for understandable reasons. But it's like this is the last time you want to do that, because that's where shit gets really bad. That's exactly what that side wants, you know. And so I think we have to figure out, in even in small ways, to like not do that, even if it's like interpersonally, like say what you think, you know. But certainly in terms of like our creative work, you know, is like figuring out how to like keep some flame alive. You know, I think, you know, you guys, it's like, I mean, for all of us, like, we have real concrete things, practical things that we have to consider, because it's a business, it's an industry, and you do have to work with the like the currents of where the industry is going, and because it's about business ultimately, you know, it's like about getting things financed and all that. So, but yeah, it's like figuring out how can I still keep some flame alive, you know, like, and what you were just saying, like what I really want to say, what things I really want to, what ideas I want to get in here. Because we can't just go like fully cynical, like fully kind of like just check out, you know?
No, we're all in this together, man. You know what I mean? Like, if people, worse things have happened to better people. You know what I mean? In every moment, I think that, you know what I'm saying? And like, we're speaking from an extreme position of privilege, just the fact that we're like in this thing and still working. You know what I'm saying? And for me, and Far, you brought this up a couple times. It actually, one of the things that inspired me to start this podcast was I was like, you know, you're basically saying that like, we're going to have to figure out the production side of it. And again, this is also a Marxist point of view. This is a materialist point of view, that like, if you have the means of production, yeah, I mean, you might not have the means to put everything on the billboard in Times Square the same way that they do for these, you know, shows that are backed by a studio or whatever, but like, you can still make the shit. You know what I mean? And if I may offer like my personal kind of perspective here, is like, I've had a bifurcated point of view on self-production for a while, because on the music shit, that's all DIY, bro. It's all just financing your own thing, meeting engineers, paying them, how much is this thing, printing shit. I mean, okay, I'm not as old as you, but I have a printed CDs at disc makers. You know what I'm saying? I have, I did print out my little fucking picture at a Kinko's and mail it to labels. Okay, but on the TV shit, because I came in a very privileged position.
Do you know what an 8-track is?
I do know what an 8-track is. I have one right. Can we do like surprise guests on the show? What if like your mom was over there with an 8-track and she came, you know what I mean? Like, this is Josh, keep put it in the notes. We're for the next time. But you know, like, because of I came in, the first thing that ever happened to me was this overall with HBO for 2 years. You know what I mean? So like, I was like, I'm not doing no DIY shit ever again, at least for film, right? Mm-hmm. And I took that money and then went and made more records that sounded less DIY, but they were still technically DI us, me, Richie Beretta, Dave Good, right? Like, it was, but I was self-financing, whereas like, you know, the first time I tried to self-finance a short film, I spent like $110,000, then we had no sound, and it was such a nightmare that I was like, is like too many moving pieces, too much tragedy. It was just, I was like, never again. You know what I'm saying? And this is kind of me a little bit trying to heal that wound where I'm like, I mean, obviously it would suck if there wasn't camera. Like if Josh was like, hey, we actually lost all the footage, that would suck. And this is why Josh is here, because it happened before when I was filming myself. You know what I mean? But like, it would suck, but then I would recover from it. You know, we would all recover. Karim might be like, oh, thank God. Okay. You know, the episode's not coming out. They didn't see all the stuff that I said about. No. But like, I'm now realizing that like the production element of this, that's where the power is. Obviously there's a lot of power in writing and there's a lot of, you know, power in editing and all these things. But if we're not all working together and figuring out, like I sometimes dream of sort of like a collective, not about like a company or anything, but it's just like, yo, if we all, I mean, there are people who think the writing thing is extremely hard, and yet you would get on the phone with anybody, I would get on the phone with anybody and be like, do this, and they solved it, and there's no hair off my back. You know what I mean? I call Karim for editing stuff all the time, and for him it's no, you know, skin off his nose, but like for somebody else, for me here, I'm like, please explain this to me. You know what I'm saying? Same with, you know, Josh, how he feels about cameras. So I'm like, okay, the way that we can, you know, it's a, you know, this is a very standard Hollywood thing. It's one for them, one for you, one for them, one for you, right? But like, I think we're gonna have to do a lot more one for us. You know what I'm saying? And like, it's gonna take a little bit of humility. You know what I'm saying? Because if you have the idea and there's no part for me in it, and it's not my idea, whatever, I'm okay, but I still want to support it, right? Because then the next one, you know, well, it's not even because the next one is me, but it's like we have to see ourselves in all of it. You know what I'm saying? And that's how we can pull together resources to do shit. And I think we're gonna have to be doing more and more of that to just keep, like you were saying, keep the flame alive. You know,
I don't think you can overstate what a sea change has happened just with technology and equipment. I mean, when I was in my 20s in this business, for Josh to frankly just even have had time working with the level of cameras he's working with now to get this level of quality would be a really rare event. To just be in the room with that kind of equipment, much less own it, have it at his disposal. Like there was a couple thousand cameras of that quality and they were all in LA for the most part. That was it.
Damn.
Like that was it. So you were renting these things for thousands and thousands of dollars. Like you just didn't have the time like with it to like, so how do you become a blacksmith? How do you get good at your craft if you just don't even get to hold the tools? And now it is like, that's a joke. It's hard for somebody to imagine. What do you mean not having the camera, not having the editing equipment, not having it? Like that has all become totally equalized. The writing hasn't changed, right? It would be if we were saying like, oh, nobody's got paper, nobody's got pencils, but that hasn't changed.
I really appreciate that perspective. I think that's a good note for us to end on, because it's just what I'm taking from that perspective, right, is that we have the tools. You know what I mean? And there's kind of no excuse, you know, and help each other out, you know what I'm saying? And like support your friends' ideas and shit, because it's, because what we have is the artistic point of view, you know what I mean? And when you're making stuff that's outside of the traditional marketplace, the question is not what's going to sell. The question is what's the best version of this that we can agree on. And I think that's very exciting, and I think that bodes well. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show, and I hope you guys come back again, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope y'all, I've been making this vegan fucking bolognese the whole time, so if you want to stay, please stay. If not, I'll send you home with some sauce, but give me a second to tweak it a little bit. But there's a lot of vegetarians in this town, you know, and I the first time Karim and I had lunch afterwards, he was like, oh yeah, I'm a vegetarian. I was like, you let me pick the restaurant? You didn't tell me? You're vegan. Okay, well thank God, because there's no meat anywhere near this shit. Okay, thank you guys so much. That was episode 13 of the Chris Gabo Show. I appreciate it. Chris. Thank you, Josh. Cool. Bro, that was a great closing.